So it is my privilege to introduce our guest speaker. It's honestly, it's a thrill after a year and a half to have a guest speaker. This is like the same old stuff is new again. How cool is that? So Reverend Lisa Carson, I met when I was in ministerial school and then was beginning to connect, and then things changed in her life, which changed the connection we were sharing. So let me introduce her to you. She was introduced to religious science through the Paradise Church of Religious Science at the age of 14. She fell in love with science of mind philosophy and with the teen summer camps. She studied the teachings on and off through college, where she earned her Bachelor of Arts and teaching credential in the mid-'80s. She returned to studying science of mind more seriously, becoming a licensed minister in 2004. She has worked in various ministerial capacities since then. From 2015 to 2019, she was the assistant minister at the Center for Spiritual Living in Chico, working as the youth and family director. She was ordained in 2018, and in August of 2019, her desire to travel and live overseas returned as she left on a pilgrimage, interviewing people for her Rev on the Road YouTube channel. You're going to be really surprised where she wound up. Part of it wasn't even a road. I'm just going to say there were no roads involved in part of this. Sharing spiritual insights from Copenhagen to Germany to Switzerland and Italy. She returned to India, where she lived for 4 months in a spiritual eco-village. Lisa continued her travels, heading to Thailand in early February of 2020. Southeast Asia has been Reverend Lisa's intended goal, the place that she desired to teach science of mind after previous visits. She is now the senior minister at the Center for Spiritual Living Thailand, which was started by Reverend Robert Applegate. She intends to share the teachings with many parts of Thailand, both online and in person, whenever possible. After almost 2 years of being away, mostly due to COVID restrictions, once you're over there, you're over there. Okay. She's back in the U.S. for the summer. She is speaking at various CSL centers, sharing about the cultural diversity and her journey. Welcome, Reverend Lisa Carson.
And we'll have the slides go up there. Great. One more back. Can you take it? Oh. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay. Just ignore the person behind me. And I'll begin. I have to. Oh, that's right. Well, they can. Yes, can. Okay. So the title of my talk, and now you can hear me clearly, I hope, is Trusting the Universe as it Reveals Many Expressions of the One. And I want to begin by stating that Einstein said that one of the most important questions we could ever answer is, do you believe the universe is friendly or not? And after the last 2 years, I really believe the universe is a friendly place. Because on my journey, I did have to trust. I had to know that every experience was leading me to where I needed to be. Sometimes it was a matter of staying where I was, moving forward, moving in a different direction, but I had to trust. And also the revealing expressions of the one. I want you to think about your own lives now and how you have been on also a journey, maybe longer than these past 2 years that you can recall, but some kind of a pilgrimage where you've had to just know that it's all God. And it shows up in very unique ways. It shows up in the people you experience, the places you are. And it reminds you or it reminded me that the universe truly is friendly. And so, as Matthew Fox states in this first slide, every faith tradition offers an image of a sacred, I have it written down here, a little easier for me to see when I said that. Every faith tradition offers an image of a sacred web into which we are woven. We are the glittering jewels at each intersection of the net, reflecting all the other jewels through the threads we reach each other, passing information across the expanse of space. Matthew Fox was a rebel minister as he was kind of kicked out of the Catholic Church in the early 90s because he did believe that there were truths in so many teachings. And that's one thing that I found on my journey. When I first went to Copenhagen, I got to see the Christian philosophy reflected. Oh, this works here too. Great. We're in alignment now. The Christian teachings. And then journeying on to India, being able to experience the Hindu traditions. And that's why I love that the candles today were all lit in reference to, you cannot put the slide back there. So the candles that represent each spiritual faith as well. And so we will catch, one too many, but it's okay, I can work with this. So I went on to southern India where I was able to experience, as I said, the Hindu traditions, as well as, I love technology. And I went to a beautiful place in, as I said, Reverend Rafe mentioned that I was in an eco-village for 4 months in India. And I got to experience, and it was a beautiful dome that was created where people could go in and meditate and reflect on life. And that was kind of this new age religion that was experienced, more spirituality. And then moving on to Chiang Mai, where I got to experience Buddhist temples, numerous Buddhist temples all over Thailand. And it showed me the rich cultural parts of Buddhism that were always present for us. And then also down in southern Thailand, there were many Islamic communities. And so being able to go and watch people as they celebrated and their diversity, their wholeness by studying their tradition of Islam. And then finally I went to this temple that was just kind of called the Chinese temple. And it was reflecting all the world religions. And basically what it was a big tourist trap where they stuck a little bit of everything in there. But I loved how it was kind of a metaphor for all our teaching. It had a little bit, as I said, of every philosophy, kind of in a gaudy way. It's spelled gaudy however you choose, but it was just all scattered around to have like a one-stop shop. This is where religion resides. So I had a nice little visit there to remind me that the faith traditions were everywhere present. When I went on to southern India, which you can show, yes. I saw this mural on the wall, Plan B, be yourself, there's no Plan A. Because as we do experience the truth of our spirituality, we still have to be authentic to ourselves. And maybe the blue jay is looking down on you, but you're hanging on your branch however you choose. And you get to do it the way you want to. And live that authentic self was one of the words written today to focus on. So be authentic. And that's one thing I have to take with me on my journey. Knowing that I couldn't worry about the opinions of others. The opinions that said, as a woman, you should be traveling on your own throughout India and the rest of the world. Or what's your point? What are you going to end up doing? And as 2020 taught me, and I think the rest of the world, there wasn't a lot of future planning that could be done. We truly had to live in the moment and be authentic with what life presented us. And this next quote that I want to share says, faith is a spiritual conviction that what we know has greater power than any apparent exterior appearance and or resistance. Thus, in faith, we can surrender into the vision of our I am and know at the deepest level of our being that it is the Father, Mother, God within us that does the work. So what is your I am? How are you expressing that authentic voice as you pilgrimage on? And for me, inner voice that says when to fully express whatever we're here to express. I was also impressed with these young women at an adult school where I taught in southern India, as their I amness showed that they wanted to improve their lives and move beyond perhaps the village they lived in. We taught them business skills and how to sew. I didn't do the sewing part and make that clear, but I taught them English, and also I wove spiritual affirmations of empowerment into my English lessons so that these women could take that with them and move on from the life that they weren't necessarily just destined to live. Our I amness also reminds us to play and be youthful like children teach us. Or that adults can still live in their I am playful spirit and remember to play wherever you are, because that's where spirit also is activated in us. Sometimes we take things way too seriously. I was touched by this family as we connected under a little gazebo during a monsoon downpour, and we shared this resonance that we all wanted the best for our families, the best for our health, the best for our country, and we also wanted to stay dry. We related as humans, and there's so many different conditions where it seemed like we were coming back together to truly connect, even though languages sometimes separated us. Black Elk said, "Well, I stood there. I saw more than I can tell and understood more than I saw. For I was seeing in a sacred manner the shapes of all things in the spirit and the shape of all shapes, as they must all live together as one." I really resonated with this quote because I realized that we all are expressing out in many different shapes and directions as we go forth on our pilgrimage. And I was impressed with the mandalas that I saw throughout India and Thailand, where we begin together as this beginning of light and move outward in many different directions, expressing our unique, authentic selves. So as I said, having to trust the universe led me to know that when the voice kicked in when I was in India that said, leave early, don't stay 6 months like you had anticipated. You need to leave and move on to Thailand after 4 months. And at first I was like, wait a moment, I got plans here. But I just heard this voice in October 2019 that said, no, you need to move forward. And so I did. And I bought my plane ticket back in October. And I moved on to Thailand. And that was February 4th, 2020. And I was so grateful as things began to unfold that I was able to safely get to this island in southern Thailand before COVID had even been uttered. And there I was able to begin doing work on this little island of making connections. We were able to walk around and have little meditations and little huts. And I love the fact that I was there to connect before we began to have to lock down. Christian Sorensen, in his book, says, when you live in alignment with your soul, loving who you truly are, you will bring your realization back into the oneness with people, the planet, and the universe. You'll live knowing an internal peace and be a loving difference maker on the planet. Now, it was difficult to be a difference maker this past year and a half because I realized that there were a lot of things that were kind of getting in my way. And I knew that I had to stay in that alignment, that trust, that knowing that I was in the right place at the right time, that I was doing what I needed to do, and that I would move on when that time came as well. So think about your own past experience this last 2 years of having to live in alignment and try to be a difference maker. I met a few difference makers while I was in Thailand. And here at the beginning of 2021, people from all over the world, different countries who were also kind of stuck in Thailand, came together to make this unified statement at a Buddhist temple near where I lived. I also met difference makers with these young Thai people who helped get me through some really challenging physical and emotional times while I was having to do the best that I could without the circumstances that I had expected. I was delighted to see these young Thai dancers just continuing to celebrate their culture down in southern Thailand, sharing their traditional costumes and reminding me to continue to dance in life despite the craziness that might be occurring around us. Another quote by Christian Sorensen: "When aligning with the mystical and living from the mountaintop, the fight along the false fault lines of division like race, politics, and income brackets stops naturally. There's equality for all, not just for those you're in sympathetic agreement with. Celebrate diversity of perception and lifestyles by embracing the differences of others." This quote really meant a lot to me because as I was hearing about the politics going on and knowing that people in Thailand had been so kind to me, truly reaching out and giving me things that they didn't even have to give. And then I would hear about violence toward Asian Americans back in my own country. And I felt so sad. In fact, one of my dear friends, her aunt, a Thai American who had lived in the US for 20 years, was beaten with a baseball bat. And here, her niece had been so kind and caring to me. And so as we celebrate the diversity of other cultures, we embrace however they do their lives. And here, Take Your Daughter to Work Day is played out a little differently than it might in the US, but as I guess I need to shift that. So we have 3 different computers going on here, and Rafe does a really good job of it, but being a newbie, I'm taking it slowly. So here, as I said, Take Your Daughter to Work Day played out a little differently, and I loved how every day was almost Take Your Daughter to Work Day for some Thai people. And just the compassion they had focused around their families was truly impressive to me. I also saw that despite what country we were in, we still had young college graduates with aspirations to go on and live their lives fully and make the world a better place. The universe will guide you to the perfect connections. Here, I had to trust also that I was meeting the people that I needed to meet, and these people showed up to do Mindfulness Mondays with me, where we would pick up trash along the beaches, watch the sunset, and talk about spiritual matters. So it was a wonderful experience, as I said, having connections with people. And I also met people on a little boat, and they were from all different countries where we shared the commonalities of kind of being stranded abroad, and they came to my workshops. And so I trusted the law of attraction to bring people to me in times where I couldn't always just go out and meet people in other ways. This young Muslim woman lured me in with her delicious ice cream from her shop, but then we ended up becoming good friends and had so much in common, just from taking that first step to move beyond the barriers and find many expressions of the one in different forms. One day when I was feeling a little sad and I knew that COVID rates were on the increase and I wasn't sure I'd be able to make it back home for the summer, So I was walking along the beach at low tide and kind of feeling sorry for myself. Did you guys do any of that this last year? Okay. You can relate maybe a little bit. So the saying here is, trust Spirit to send comforting beings as you journey along. You are never truly alone. And so I was having my little pity party, and all of a sudden I heard a noise behind me, and I saw these 3 beautiful birds flying right at me. I know a lot of people might duck and cover, but I love birds. So it was the perfect little gift for me in that moment. They landed on me, and we just had about 10 minutes of laughter. I was laughing. I don't know what they were doing. Actually, they were also trying to free the bird-shaped earring dangling from my earlobe, I found out. That's why I'm kind of grabbing my ear, because, after having it ripped on a few times, I realized they're not just here to say hi. Find treasures in the middle of mud. This little girl, I could tell she was a little frightened of me at first, but then she brought up this shell, and she was bravely showing me this thing she had picked up, and she wasn't sure if there was anything in it. And I loved her expression because it reflected both confidence and fear. 2 things I could relate to a lot this past year as well. And so I saw this nailed to a temple tree, and it said, the entire world revolves in your mind. Do you ever make up stories in your mind, fears that, you kind of think might happen? I don't know about you, but I worried a whole lot more than I needed to in my life, and still sometimes do. And I realized that we do make up so many things. We put this energy into something that never comes to fruition. And I just have to laugh and say, yeah, why do we create this drama? In fact, it should say there, don't let the illusions keep you in a state of fear and stop you from moving through the open door. So what are your painted dragons that are blocking you from moving through the clear entryway that you see in front of you? Are they fears of doubt? Not enoughness? Maybe that it'll just never work out? I think it's time to maybe shift your perspective. And like this little boy, you sometimes just need to grab your lifesaver and walk toward where you want to go. What is your lifesaver? The universe reveals itself everywhere and in everything. My lifesaver was connecting with nature as often as possible. I would go to the beach side, I would go to the jungles, and I was reminded of the interconnectivity that life brings everywhere. And so when I couldn't tell where one tree ended and the other one began, and they were this beautiful collage of unity, it reminded me of how our world could be, where we're all interwoven and connected. And it also gave me that comfort and that knowing that things were truly working out despite the appearances. This was some other sign. I got lots of signs on my journey. But this one said, when I think about the world where I was born, feeling caught up in a system, a constant running around, the so-called security with the restlessness in the eyes, the people who made it but their dreams that died, and almost everything is possessed by possession, almost everything is about nothing. It is love that can make it worthwhile. It can touch the heart and break down the wall. Focus on the beauty that has been there all along, instead of fixating on things that bring the feeling down. Life can be so much more than fix, convince, control. So loosen up, quiet the mind, and have some fun. And I think of this when I realize that I'm trying to fix, convince, control oftentimes in life. You think you can kind of do it better than the universe? You're like, I got this. I just need to work a little harder. Instead of quieting the mind, going within. So find that restlessness that's in your eyes that's maybe beckoning you to do something different. You've had a pandemic to think about it. Now what do you want to do? Perhaps you're like wanting to be like this fisherman, living simply, going out every morning at sunrise, coming back at sunset. Maybe you want to relocate to a little bungalow on the beach, tiny homes, or teach in a building without walls. Are you stuck? As Ernest Holmes says, as you learn to release all your burdens to the right action of God, you will find that everything falls into its proper place. You let your problems slip away from you, realizing that a power greater than you are and a presence that is within you is ready, willing, and able to guide you in all ways. So think about that. Where are you worrying and struggling and not being guided, not stepping into that next direction of your life? So sometimes we just need to start with moving in the direction that we want to go. And so you need to just take one foot forward in the right direction. Now, this is called the Temple of the Tiger. And I went here one day, and to get to the top, it's only 1,260 steps to the very top. Not that I was counting. And there's also a barrage of monkeys that are really kleptomaniac monkeys. I just got to call it what it is to get to the top. Well, I wanted to give up after that first little level because I've been assaulted a few times by those little loving creatures of God. And I also realized that I had another 1,200 steps to get to. Well, I wanted to just put one foot in front of the other, knowing that with each step, I would eventually get to where I needed to be. And I did, even though it was hot and humid. But to remind yourself that all you need to do is just put one step toward your goal, toward the direction of whatever self-expression is being called upon by you. What growth and change are you being guided to now that the storms are a little bit more on the horizon for many of us? We get to reevaluate what direction we're turning toward. I was delighted to work with these hotel owners who came together to not only learn more English, but to discover how to environmentally green their buildings, to make it more planet-friendly. And so seeing their conviction on taking a new direction of their lives was something that really inspired me, as did this young man who was a fisherman for 20 years until an anchor ripped open his arm. And he shifted. He changed direction by opening a pizza stand. And he had the best dough and sauce on the island. Trust the universe to transform obstacles into your pillars of strength. Sometimes those things that look like they're blocking you are really there to support and guard you as you grow. So you might not grow in a perfect straight line. In fact, it might be a little convoluted and curvy. But eventually, if you trust, you will blossom. I love this quote by Lao Tzu. Those who flow as life flows know they need no other force. So instead of forcing things, being like the river that just flows downstream, flowing through the obstacles, flowing through whatever's in your way to get back to the source. So as COVID rates began to increase and I was feeling more discouraged, I had to remember that, yes, the universe has gotten me this far. I just need to trust the process. And I can't tell you in the time that we have all the details that came together to allow me to get out of Thailand just in time, because they are in a fourth wave right now, which is imposing many lockdown restrictions. As being part of the global movement, this quote is a statement from CSL that says, "We envision humanity awakening to its spiritual magnificence and discovering the creative power of thought, a world where each and every person discovers his, her, their own personal power and ability to create an individual life that works within a world that works for everyone." And so I hope today that you're going to take your individual expression and move forth in your life, expressing that authentic voice as you step into this world that truly does and will work for everyone. And so just being that authentic voice on this beautiful planet that we all share. Thank you so much for listening. Namaste. And thank you, Reverend Rafe.